sit down with their son and to talk about these things. So number two is turning on parental controls. And I don't have time to go into any depth here, but they're complicated. And if you've ever tried doing it, you know what I'm talking about. So the number one question I got from parents for my presentation was, will you come to my house and do this for me? And I said, I'd love to do it. Literally, I can't pull that off. So my book, Parenting the Digital World, covers all the difficult conversations and all the issues you need to have with your child, and how to implement, a safe digital world for your child, but also how to turn on all the parental controls on all their devices, including their Xbox and PlayStation. And I just updated this over the summer. And so everything in this book is absolutely 100% up to date. The amount of time our children are spending online is changing their mental health and their habits. And lots of studies show that children who spend a lot of time on screens, especially social media, and even Facebook is admitting it's affecting their mental health. 34% more likely to suffer a suicide-related outcome who are on there for 3 hours or more. And the kids who are on there 5 hours or more, they're 48% more likely to think about hurting themselves or having feelings of hopelessness. So we need to start thinking differently about this, because the average teen is on there 6 to 8 hours a day. They're checking their social media 13 to 19 times an hour. We need to start talking to our kids about a healthy digital diet, right? Putting some limits on this, using the screen controls on the iPhone and on the Android device. And again, I walk you how to set that up in my book. But talking to our kids about not just the time they spend there, but what they're doing there and the quality of that time. And we want them to understand that hanging your self-worth on these images and people's perception of these images and how they're responding to these images is not healthy. And it's unfortunately reinforced through dopamine, right? Every time they get a like or comment, they'll get a little dopamine release. And it's encouraging that behavior, right? To constantly be picking up their phone and checking it. So let me give you guys, in my last 5 minutes here, let me give you guys some final recommendations on this and point you towards some resources. So know what your child's usernames and passwords to everything. I highly recommend you check in on your child, and they should know that you're checking in on them, because you're more likely to get the behavior that you want by looking for it, right? By your child know you're looking for it, than just hoping that they do it. And again, you have a great kid, you have a sweet kid, but when they're online, all bets are off. Anything is possible, and I've seen it happen. So when your child knows that mom and dad are checking in, they're more likely to pump the brakes, hopefully, and think differently about what they're doing. Installing an app like Bark is very important. There's other apps like this. I think this one's the best. I've been using it on my boys' phones for years now, and all my instructors who are all law enforcement use it on their child's phones. That device should not be in a bedroom after lights out. There's nothing good happening there. A device behind a door with the lights out and bored are common denominator factors for bad choices. So park that device in your phone at night. In your room at night, and allow your child to sleep without the low-level anxiety that gets created by having that device sitting on the nightstand next to them. My book is available on Amazon.com. You make sure you get the 3rd edition. That is the new updated edition, 3rd edition. And also it's available as an ebook on my website, cybersafetycop.com. You need to filter the internet that's coming into your child's device. Children who are minding their own business and not intentionally looking for pornography or really horrible, violent content can accidentally stumble onto it. You need to set up filtering on all their devices, and you should also set it up on your Wi-Fi. So I found that there's options out there. Cleanbrowsing.com, I think, is the simplest to set up on your child's multiple devices, including their laptops. So go to cleanbrowsing.com, take a look at what's going on there. Their setup is very, very simple. They have a free version and a paid version for you to try out. And that's what I recommend. And again, on all their devices. Bark is a fantastic app that will help support you in your ability to understand what's going on with your child's digital world and alert you when there's a problem. If you use Cyber Safety Cop promo code, you get 15% off this subscription forever. It's the best deal you can get. If you're using something now that's working, go with that. Go with what works for you. But if you're thinking, okay, I need to have something like this, I would absolutely check these guys out. Bark.us is the website, and I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Please visit my website. There are handouts like my newsletter there. You can find out where I might be speaking. All those, you can attend anything that I have on my website for a parent presentation. It's free to attend. I also do training on behavioral threat assessment. If you're an educator and you want to know more about violence prevention at your school, there's information about that there. And also you can find about how you can bring me to your school to talk to your kids or to your parents as well. I publish a lot of helpful information online. So on social media, so follow me on social media. That's another way for you to share tips and parenting advice for a safe online world for your kiddo. And here's my contact information. I have parents who reach out to me after seeing me, 2 years ago. I saw you 2 years ago, and I got a question. So feel free to email me, clay@cybersafetycop.com. I would love to chat with you and answer any questions that you may have. And of course, I'm looking forward to your questions today. So be sure to have those ready, and I'll be sticking on and answering those when we can. Hi, Veronica.
Hi, Clay. Thank you. That was amazing. One thing when you have referred to porn and the dopamine and everything that's associated with it, and as you said, parents can do everything right, correct? I mean, they could have their parent controls on their kids' devices. They could make sure their at-home computers have the filters on them as well and the blocking. But these kids go to campus 8 hours a day. They go over to friends' houses, and it can come through their devices as well. And I love that you pointed that out, because this is in no way, I have sat through so many of your presentations, which when you go into the weeds for 2 hours, it is a phenomenal journey. And you give examples of this parent who had done everything right, and yet here we are with them having been exposed to it. And when we say porn, I don't know if people understand that we're not talking this studio porn that typically takes a credit card, and it's a money-making operation, which it all is anyways. But it's more that gonzo porn, right? Where it is that amateur porn, live streaming, and these are like grotesquely violent. And because it is the #1 sex educator, they are learning that you don't have sex with a person, you do it to a person, and it completely objectifies the female. Like I said, over 85% of the time, but in the gonzo porn, I would say, don't you think it's closer to 90, 95%?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So the most popular, porn is usually, the kind of the amateur porn, that kind of thing, or live streaming. And the things when you go to these porn sites, like YouPorn or PornTube, they're like YouTube, but for porn, right? So they aggregate, thousands and thousands and thousands of videos. And what makes this different than maybe like the pornography that a parent might have been exposed to as a child, right? Like the Playboy magazine, is that there's this thing called novelty, right? So the first time a drug user tries a drug, they get a lot of dopamine release. It's an amazing high. And then if you talk to them, they're like, every time after that, they're chasing that high. They're trying to achieve that first experience. So, and that's called novelty. So, and with dopamine release. So it's the same thing with videos. Or if you look at a magazine, right, you see that image the first time, and there's a lot of dopamine release. But then you look at it again and again and again, not so much over time. And so that novelty wears off. But with these videos, because we're looking at a website with thousands of videos and like tens and maybe hundreds of categories, you can move from video to video, category to category, and keep getting a high level of dopamine release every time, because there's a high level of novelty being achieved, because there's so many videos and so many options here. And so because there's high levels of dopamine release, you have high levels of addiction potential here. And as we know, that most people who are addicted to anything became addicted to it before age 18. Yeah. So your neural connections are being laid down as an adolescent. They're very powerful. They persist. And if you become addicted to anything, including pornography, as an adolescent, you're likely to be addicted for the rest of your life. So we need to protect our children's brains. I see it as this. I see it as us protecting their brains, and because it's going to inform their ability to be successful for the rest of their lives, whether it's in a relationship or work or whatever. The brain development is very important, and porn completely hijacks their brains and their brain development, and really kind of rewires it to some really destructive sexual ideas. And one of the number one things searched on porn is sex with your step sibling or your step parent. So this idea of having sex with like an intimate person in your family, like a step parent or a step sibling, is like one of the most searched things online. So just these very bizarre, destructive ideas are being reinforced, maybe every day on your child if they're watching pornography. And it's not uncommon, or I think even strange, for a young man to be struggling with this. Right. It's very common, and that's why we need to talk to them. Like, I don't believe in shaming children or shaming my boys if they're curious about this. We just need to give them good information and really support them in making healthy choices.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I could talk to you for hours. And I love that you talked about we need to protect their brain, because our next speaker is going to actually explore the brain, the emotional capabilities of these youngsters, right? And they are youngsters if they're under the age of 18. They don't want to be called that. Our next panelist is Amy Borst, and I couldn't be more thrilled that she is joining us today. And we are going to be changing gears. So Clay just did a beautiful job of what is going on online. And now we're going to go into really kind of those harmful effects of social media, what it's doing to the self-esteem. What happened in 2020 when all these kids were pulled from their social circles and into this remote learning, as well as social isolation. So this is another hard topic, but I can't think of anyone better than Amy to explore it. So let me give you a brief bio on her as well. So Amy Borst is a licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed professional clinical counselor, and board certified registered art therapist in private practice currently in San Clemente. Amy specializes in trauma and utilizes EMDR and art directives along with other modalities to help her clients move forward in their lives. How I think she is best known, at least for me, she was 13 years at Laura's House. She was our clinical director, and we do have a thing at Laura's House. People may leave, but they always remain a part of our family. So I am excited to have you here today, Amy, and I am going to yield it to you just with a quick reminder. I do see some questions are coming in. I will invite you to post those questions at 11:15. I will still scroll up and try to extrapolate these. However, it'd be best if you wait till 11:15. Okay, Amy, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Veronica. So I thought I would start by talking about the impact of social media usage on mental health in relation to the general social emotional development phase of teens. So the development phase that teens are in is primarily to figure out who they are. What is their identity? It's a phase of self-discovery, and this is done through general experiences with their peers, peer group affiliations, and various social connections. In addition to this, brain development is not fully achieved until the age of 25. Specifically, the prefrontal cortex, which is the front of the brain, This part of the brain actually accesses and performs rational thought. It therefore keeps in check impulsive behavior. The part of the brain that teens are accessing is the amygdala, which is kind of tucked in underneath. It's really nicely protected underneath everything. It's kind of at the core of the brain. And it's a very small part of the brain as well. That doesn't mean that it doesn't yield as much power, but it basically, the amygdala's role, it's also known as the lizard brain, by the way. The role in understanding feelings occurs through a more instinctual, a more gut reaction basis. So that's very different from the prefrontal cortex, which rational thought coming into play, using those gut reactions to determine what we think about them, how we feel about them, and therefore how we plan to move forward. So it's very much, teens are very much responding to their environments through that instinctual gut reaction type based information loop. So during the isolation period of the pandemic, as we all know, most of us had to, and were also able to, pivot our daily routines to distance learning, engagement, and an interaction through the internet, social media. And in the cases for teens, you know, not only they basically were able to access, they were already accessing social media, obviously, but they were able to really make that pivot and meet the requirements of their developmental phase through social media. Albeit it was intended to be a temporary shift, but in a lot of cases, it was a really handy, very convenient option for all of us during this time of isolation, during that time of isolation. It enabled teens to connect. It enabled teens to feel like they were connecting and feel like they were being seen and feel a sense of belonging. And it also enabled them to have different experiences vicariously. Clay mentioned so many different examples of this, but you know, some of them also include watching and following different gamers, and in some cases, even, you know, gamers across the country, really. So with that, social media has become an even more important influence and a potential as well disruption to the typical development phase of teens. So it kind of, in a way, it was a very nice option for us. But again, I don't think the intention was for it to last as long as it did. And it really, in a way, now we're seeing the ramifications of this a little bit more. That shift, that pivot really maximized, in a lot of respects, what is already a challenging life phase for teens. And I wanted to just kind of, you know, mention this, you know, again, Clayton mentioned, you know, not wanting to come from that place of shame. This, you know, when you think of it as, it really was a survival for many of us, and really how genius that our teens were able to readily access this. It's also interesting when you think of it in terms of how each generation has really had our sociological challenges. And when you think of it in those terms, it kind of normalizes that each generation will have that, will have something to overcome, to obtain, to learn, learnings that come from it. I was thinking of the very beginning stages of actually the lockdown portion of the pandemic was, there was an article that came out, and you know, it was intended to be lighthearted and funny, and a point of, yeah, I'd say lightheartedness during all the confusion and stress of that time. And it was reflecting on how Generation X was already savvy and well-versed at locking down, because that was the generation. And not to, you know, obviously there's many nuances to, you know, every generation. But that was the generation of latchkey kids and spending time alone quite often with, you know, both parents needing to work. And so, yeah, Generation X had no problem making that pivot to locking down. So, you know, it just kind of brought into focus that, yes, each generation has its own presentations of various challenges. And in this respect, we can kind of look at the pandemic in that way, that this is what this generation's challenge is. And so anyway, while social media has been able to fulfill some of these needs, albeit flawed, it's always ideal to have a balance in anything and all things. And, you know, I just kind of wanted to comment that I think a lot of teens, maybe who don't have family support in their community, they have been able to find that sense of belonging through social media, through contact with others. I think the important piece in guiding our teens is identifying what is real and what is not. It's there's a sense of false security, I think, at times with some of the engagements that happen, some of the postings where, you know, I can take risks, I can put myself out there, I can feel out this part of myself, I can feel out this identity from the distance and safety of my room or my family room, and not worry so much about you know, then going to school and you know, there's an anonymity that can happen at times. So there is some positives there, but it also kind of takes away the responsibility with some of the posts. I'm hoping that makes sense. But you know, in some cases, I think that this reliance on social media for that connection, that belonging, that sense of belonging, has actually heightened the day-to-day fear of social situations. There can sometimes be a hesitancy to take risks to engage and connect authentically to others, you know, really identified as social anxiety, you know, yeah, social anxiety. And in some cases, that social anxiety, it's almost like a circular impact, in that the dependency or the social anxiety in real social situations deepens that dependency on social media to meet those needs and gain that instant gratification from being able to connect. Clayton mentioned, you know, accessibility as an issue. There is accessibility technically if a teen's social media is not being monitored or limited. It can happen 24/7, right? And we all have heard about the impact of blue light on our sleep and disrupting sleep. So there's a combination of that physiological impact, as well as the ability to just access, kind of meet those needs when you have it. You can't sleep. What do most teens do? Probably get on social media and kind of scroll through and look through anything to just, you know, feel some connection, feel some reassurance. So lack of sleep contributes automatically to a heightened level of anxiety. And again, that circular effect can occur wherein there, you know, I think sometimes there, like, flooding happens, like an overwhelm with that type of pattern, you know, sleep disruptions, not able to be as emotionally stable because of the sleep disruptions to handle and tolerate difficult situations. It kind of just deepens everything, the difficulty of some of these things. So yeah, with that being said, social media, you know, it's not intended to be the end all be all for our social exchange. really kind of was for a period of time. But as parents, it's really important to kind of, really just be aware and available to your teens. One of the things that comes to mind that I equate it with is when you think of it in terms of your teen needs you just as much as they do when they are infants. If you reflect on that infant phase of need, it's really the same level of need. It just is different and it's more complex. And it takes a willingness to just be available to your teen, to really truly listen to them, and connect with them. Also offering them various opportunities for connection, not giving up on some of the value, not replacing, I guess, some of the values that you and your family might hold for social media. Role modeling a balance with that. One of the ways I think to kind of approach it is to really talk with your teens about what is the intention of this activity, this type of engagement. What are you hoping to achieve or attain from this type of interaction? And is that happening? And when that's not happening, just creating a higher level of awareness when that is no longer happening, or there's an exhaustion from it, what can you do differently? Maybe that's when the pivot needs to happen to, more direct in-person engagement with loved ones. And so just really offering those opportunities as much as possible. And really, when you think of it, when our teens are children, you think about the various activities that we promote involvement in for children to become well-rounded. They're usually a reflection of what our values are, taking pride in your schoolwork, maybe in some cases, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, volunteer work, different activities that we encourage our children to become involved in, that reflect our values. It's no different as a teen, basically. So continuing that, and it's going to look different. It might not necessarily be Girl Scouts at, in the high school years. In some cases it is, but just allowing for those opportunities and encouraging those opportunities to provide some of that balance, more of that balance. As Clayton mentioned, yes, it's more and more it's coming out. There's always been different studies on this, but it's coming out even more that, there's a higher incidence rate of depression and low self-esteem that is directly correlated to the amount of social media use. I'm hearing more and more studies related specifically to Instagram. So, and it makes sense. So the more that you're on social media, the higher the incidence rate of depression and low self-esteem. Teens are reporting, so where that pivot to social media to meet that need, it might not be meeting that need for belonging and connection anymore, I guess is what I'm trying to highlight here. Those feelings of maybe during, we all have this, feelings of experiences of low self-esteem, those moments, right? Those vulnerable moments that happen, and tapping into social media for some relief. What they're finding is, in most cases, gosh, it was so high. I think it was like 1 out of 3. They're not finding relief. They're finding that they're feeling even worse about themselves. And Instagram is, a bit of a sticky wicket because it has that ability to access and feel connected to celebrities and various influencers. But that then can also lead to these unhealthy comparisons regarding appearance and lifestyles. And because it is so immediate, once upon a time, it was just like you would go to school, you'd have interactions with friends, and maybe you were able to go home and kind of titrate that and kind of process what happened there. But now there is an opportunity for it to be constant if it's not regulated, if it's not monitored. And as Clayton mentioned, teens are not always able to do that because they're using that different part of the brain, and developmentally, they're trying to meet these needs, gain some gratification from feeling that sense of connection to others. But it's not meeting the bar, basically. It's not enough through social media. All right, let me see what else I can kind of mention. I think I kind of wanted to just reemphasize that it's typical. Those of you with teens have experienced moodiness. I kind of wanted to touch upon this a little bit, because I think in my generation, teens, the teen phase was always attributed to hormones, and this is why teens are emotional and impulsive. And what I think is so interesting with all the studies of the brains is there's been a shift to, it's actually, the brain is just different. The brain, actually, let me rephrase that. The brain is not different. It's just what parts of the brain are being accessed is different from what us as adults are able to access. And so with that piece being said, it kind of normalizes these moods, these mood shifts. A couple things that I wanted to kind of just mention, because these are always really helpful and really typically easily accessible, is if there is a mood that your teen is in that they're uncomfortable with, you can tell they're uncomfortable with, if they're hopefully sharing with you how they're feeling at those times. One of the really direct things that can happen to create a shift in mood is movement. It doesn't have to be rigorous exercise necessarily. It can be just literally any type of movement, maybe getting up and walking to another area, getting up and disconnecting from social media, disconnecting from their computers, their phones, maybe going for a walk, even a short walk. So any type of movement. The other thing that can help create a shift in mood is music. And I think most teens you're probably already finding that there's a very specific interest in music during this phase of life. And so that's a good thing. So type of music might also cause a shift or create a shift to a different mood. Anything, I'd say moodiness, so to normalize moodiness for an extended period of time. And this is very nuanced. You all know your children best. So when you have those moments of uncertainty, which we all do as parents, like, is this typical? Should I be concerned about this? Don't hesitate to reach out to somebody just to consult, just to kind of check in. It's no failing as a parent to just check in and just kind of reassure yourself that, hey, this is pretty typical. Check in with your teen as well. Anything beyond, I'd say like a few days, lasting beyond a few days, it might be an indication that your teen is struggling with some mental health issues. And again, checking in with them. If there is a resistance, if like a shutting out, I think that's when I would seek out consultation or see what can happen. Teens aren't always apt to talk with their parents about things. And so just being that source of just being available to them as much as is possible, and just really hearing them, hearing what they're saying, and taking that in. And just a side note too, it's also okay as a parent to not have all the answers, and to, kind of hit that pause button at times, and, give yourself time to figure out how you might need to move forward or what might needs to happen, if anything.
Thank you, Amy. That was amazing. So my brief takeaway is that a teenage brain is not an adult brain that just hasn't matured, that doesn't have the life experience. A teenage brain is actually different in that they're accessing different parts of the brain because the other parts that we're accessing haven't been fully developed. So I think that is huge. It's huge information for parents. And of course, educators probably already know this, that there's just kind of a different standard of care, like you said, is understanding, listen, they're acting the way they are, aside from, like you said, if we've got these moods going on for a prolonged period of time. Because they aren't tapping into the same kind of brain that we're tapping into. They don't have that luxury yet. So there can be a lot of grace as well as further explanation to the teens to help guide them. Well, anybody who knows me, I am a proponent of therapy. I always think that if you've been on this planet for more than 5 minutes, you have been traumatized. This is
Absolutely.
a rough place. So if you want to contact Amy, you can find her at amyborsttherapy.com. She's kind of my go-to referral whenever somebody needs that personal therapy or help with children. Man, I'm quick to send them to her website and to contact her, because you are one of the wisest, most compassionate, gentle humans on the planet. I thank you for your time and for sharing your expertise. I'll be pulling you back into this conversation in about 20 minutes. And we are going to pivot once again. I'm going to bring Julia Moreno into this conversation. Julia, welcome. I'm sure many of you already know her, but I'm going to give you a brief bio on her. For those of you who don't, she is our prevention education manager. So she's all things youth programs within Laura's house. Julia Moreno is the prevention education manager. She advocates to prevent violence and provide trauma-informed care through education. After graduating from Cal State University Fullerton, she began her career in advertising at Casanova McCann, working with Fortune 500 companies, and quickly realized her calling for community-driven causes. Julia then raised awareness and funds for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital through radio, television events, and community outreach. After working with communities across Southern California, her purpose transformed into supporting those affected by violence and lack of resources. Julia earned certifications in advocate for survivors of sexual assault, human trafficking, and domestic violence. Julia, I'm going to yield to you. And for all of those of you that are waiting at the bit, I did start screenshotting some of your questions in our chat box, but please feel free to flood it at 11:15. Okay, off to you, Julia.
Thank you so much, Veronica, and thank you everybody for being here. Obviously, at Laura's House, our mission is to spread education and awareness. So the fact that you are here today means that we can start conversations in our community with our kids. And this is a topic that we feel very strongly about because we know there have been so many changes in screen time since over, a year and a half ago when we all went onto screen mode for work and for school. And so we're very happy that you're here. We hope to answer all your questions. And if we don't get to them, just know that you can always reach out to us, right? We'll share our contact information, and we hope that you find this presentation valuable. So we focused a lot today on, for example, what's going on in the media, right? What's going on? What are our kids doing? And we are actually very fortunate to be all around the community talking about HEART. If you've never heard about HEART before, that is all right. It stands for Healthy Emotions and Attitudes. And what we do with that is we go into, for example, schools, clubs, community organizations, you name it. And with the purpose of really opening up conversations of what a healthy relationship should look like. Right? What are boundaries? What are red flags? For most of us, we know that we didn't grow up really talking about this at the dinner table, right? So it's very important that with our teens and with our community, we start an early conversation. And that way we hope to prevent a lot of the violence that we see. So at Laura's House, not only do we offer services like therapy, legal services, you name it. transitional housing, emergency housing, we also offer this prevention education classes. And through that and through HEART, we would like to share with you that we do offer a variety of subtopics, one of them being social media safety. We'll talk about empowerment and self-esteem, healthy masculinity, bullying, you name it. And if we don't have it and we see that there is a need in the community, we're very fortunate to work with a great amount of people and teams like you've seen Amy and Clay today, and we'll build something, right? Because we know there is a need in the community, and we do want to make sure that we do all that we can to prevent violence. That way, the clients and the survivors that we see now at Laura's house, hopefully, diminish, decrease, and we get to have all these healthy conversations in a perfect world, right? And so when it comes to teens, a lot of folks don't like to see this population being affected by any type of violence because nobody wants to see our kids and teens affected by anything negative, right? But we know statistically that a lot of them actually do experience either some type of physical, emotional, mental, right? There's different types of abuse or unhealthy relationships throughout their teenage years. And the only way which we can learn about this and talk about this is with presentations like this. So that's why we're very much happy that you're here. We will focus our short time together on social media, but just know that if you ever have any questions or would like to invite us to present to you on a variety of topics, we're always available, and we're happy to be there in Zoom, in person, in the capacity that you need us. And now quickly moving on to statistics. You've heard amazing statistics today from Clay, from Amy, and we know that there is still so much more to learn. As we know, before pandemic, teens were spending about 3 to 5 hours online. And even then, I think it's very conservative. I think a lot of parents can agree with us that it really does depend on the teen, right? On the person. But as the pandemic went on, obviously schoolwork was added. Anything from reading a book to finding something online to research to maybe connecting with their teacher. They were just naturally more on devices, whether it was a laptop, a desktop, maybe an iPad, on their phone. And we know that all those devices have internet. So that leads to a major window of possibilities, right? Some of them, like we heard from Clay, you think that your teen is looking through something, but there's very apps out there that maybe they can hide certain links or certain things. So it's very much important that we learn about this topic. And as we said repeatedly over this about hour, that we have conversations. Now we know that conversations are not easy. And as parents, I wish there was a book, right, that we can all read and just magically be amazing parents. But know that you are doing your best. And each conversation is going to look very different with each teen, right? Some parents are like, well, I don't want to scare them. I don't want to put ideas in their head, as we've mentioned, but know that knowledge is power. Knowledge and education is what's going to prevent a lot of this. For example, of our catfishing, we'll talk about that in a moment, or other things that teens may not be aware about. These are very formative years, right? And so we want to make sure that as they're growing up, they have all the tools and the knowledge possible so that they can have a healthy relationship and healthy upbringing. Now, one of the things that we talked about was this sexting and pornography at the very start, right? And as you can see on the screen, we have various statistics for you. But the main key takeaway from all this is that whether it is an indirect or direct method, a lot of the teens are exposed to this. Now, as you can imagine, when you were a teen, it can be very scary, right? If somebody does send you a picture, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get in trouble because my friend sent it to me even without me asking. So that trust that you built with your teenager, saying, you know what, let's have a conversation. I think even Veronica mentioned it last week, right? Having sessions on a weekly, monthly basis, saying, you know what, for this next hour, let's be completely honest. We can have a conversation, what is troubling you, and then consequences will be put off to the side. It will be more of a learning. And then that way you can start to have those tough conversations with your teens because it's not easy. Even as adults, right? We shy away from it a lot of the times because it's very uncomfortable and a lot of the times embarrassing. Now, we at least know that 1 in 4 teens receive some type of sexually explicit image, video, you name it. And although we've talked about that today, I really do want to talk a little bit more about the reasoning behind why they might do that. So we know it might be because of peer pressure, but a lot of the times what also happens is teenagers are testing the boundaries of trust or of love even, right? They say, if you love me, you should trust me. You should send me a picture. If you want a relationship to go to the next level, then we should be ready for that. If you want to prove something to me, right? Fill in the blank. And a lot of the times, even as teens, if some of you can remember, we sometimes think that we are going to be with our high school sweetheart forever, right? This is a person that cares for us, that we trust, and they would never hurt us. But we know that there's a lot more cultural factors, peer pressuring factors that happen, and sometimes it will get out of hand. So just as a reminder for everyone, I don't think we have to go into depth very much, but if you are under 18, any type of video or explicit picture that you take, you're actually not allowed to give consent, and therefore is not by law legal. Right? It can be considered child pornography. If you're taking a picture, it's production. If you are sending it to a friend, it's distribution. So these teens are sometimes getting into problems that they have no idea how severe they are or the extent onto which they can escalate, right? Not only, let's say they do share a picture and their trust gets violated, maybe their partner gets mad and leaks the picture or sends it to somebody else. Now that picture lives on forever. We know that. I wish there was a number where we can call the internet and say, hey, can you delete this picture? But that's not the case, right? We can do our best, but a picture will always live, or a video will always live online if it is so leaked. It's very much hard to get that deleted. Not only that, but it can lead to bullying, right? If somebody is exposed in that manner, we know that there's a lot of taunting going on, a lot of screen sharing, a lot of meme creation. And a lot of the time, especially in the work that we do, we go into classrooms after it happened, right? So maybe a teacher finds out that this is happening to a student, a parent finds out that this is happening to their child, and they look for resources like us so that we can go into classrooms and make sure that we can educate teens on that. Now, we want to get on the before, right? Before all that happens, because we really do want to prevent a lot of this from happening. So I highly encourage you all to not only have conversations of it at home, but you can bring it up to your educators, to your teachers. We're in classrooms all the time, right? And we really do want to prevent a lot of this bullying. There's a lot of risk of blackmail. And that along the same lines is fill in the blank, right? If you don't do what I say, I'll leak your picture, I'll leak your video, I'll leak this screenshot of our text messaging, right? It can really do very informed. And we want to make sure that before teens engage in any type of action that includes sexting or inappropriate pictures, that they know the consequences that can happen from that. So I know there's probably a lot of parents here that are concerned, or educators, as to even where to start. But remember that you don't need to know all the answers. That's why we come together as a community, and that's why we give presentations. So I did want to share with you all a brief overview of what our social media safety presentation looks like. So we talk about things as simple as like, hey y'all, how do you consume media, right? How often are you on your phone? If you're an Apple user, you know that actually Apple can share how much screen time you've had. It'll tell you on average you spend 7 hours a day or whatever that might be. And that's another tool that you can also use for yourself and for your team, for your family. So we really do put it into perspective like, hey y'all, in terms of 24 hours, how much time are you spending on social media? How much time are you spending online? Maybe because of school, because of work, because of other things, but a reality check goes a long way a lot of the times. We also talk about safety, right? We talk about things like turning off your location and the consequences that that may have. We talk about certain things to be aware. So as we all know, creating maybe an Instagram page, a TikTok page with another picture and another name is actually quite easy. All you need is an email. Right? So we do need to let and remind our teens that not everybody that you talk to online is real. Now, if we're 100% honest, we usually talk to teenagers and we ask them, how many social media accounts do you have? One of them, I heard of different names. It's considered a spam account, or an account where you can really post anything. You can be yourself. And then you have another account where you post your pretty pictures, right? What you want to maybe grow in following, or maybe even more accounts. And then when we ask the parents of those kids, they're like, well, my kid doesn't have social media. They're not allowed to have social media. And so just remember that all you need is an email, and it's quite easy to create something. Now, when the teen is on there, they're direct messaging, maybe poking, liking, you name it, right? There's so many things out there nowadays. They may not always know who that person is on the other side. Now, that person, like Clay and other speakers on here mentioned, they gain trust. They're fulfilling different things that the teen needs. It could be attention, it could be anything from trust, love, you name it, right? And so it could be as so simple as, we're friends now come over to my house and we'll play video games, right? How bad could that be? How hard could that be? And so that is a lot of the times where grooming takes place and where it begins. That's why we point certain things like that out to teens, right? Because we want to make sure that they're aware that we know what's happening. And a lot of the times, you will all be surprised, they teach us a lot of things, right? There's trends on trends every single day. The world, either online or social media, moves very, very fast. So it is our job at Laura's House too, to also keep on top of that and keep learning, because we do want to be a source of not only knowledge, but support, right? To let them know, hey, no matter what you're going through, we're here. We'll figure it out together. I'm so happy you trusted in us, and I'm so happy you opened up, because it is that way that we begin to have conversations. Another thing that we cover, and I'll leave this with social media presentation, is how we talk online. There's a lot of online bullying that happens. There's a lot of courage that happens between being behind a screen and typing something mean, right? Or taking a screenshot from an anonymous account and spreading something else. So we really do try to open up the conversation about that, because no matter whether it's online or in person, we should all be kind to each other. And we know that bullying does have a lot of effects on our teens nowadays, and it always has, right? But now what's happening is that there's a lot more outlets for that to happen, and a lot more platforms for those to take place. So I hope that you all take also this opportunity to know that we're here for you. Right? We're here for you to open up these conversations and have other types of things, like, for example, presentations, school clubs, workshops, things like you are on right now, right? Which is a virtual sort of discussion. And we also offer other programs. So if you really do want to take that first step in seeing how we can work together. If you're a parent, maybe you're in a PTA group, know that we're always here for any type of resources that y'all may need. We quickly share numbers with you just because, one, we're very proud of this, and two, because we want you all to know that we really can go anywhere with these conversations. Just this year, we serviced about, in 2020, we serviced about 6,700 kiddos. Now, please remind everybody, this was during a pandemic, right? Just before, in 2019, our numbers were up to 15,000. And that's very important to us, not because of a number, right? Because what of that represents? That represents that we are in classrooms, that we're having conversations with thousands of teens, and hopefully building a new culture around healthy relationships, healthy dating, and what that looks like, even with parents, what that trust looks like between them. All right, so at this point in time, I really do invite you all to take a screenshot or a picture of this slide here. This here is our teen chat line, our heart chat line. And we're very, very proud of this for a couple of reasons. It took a lot for us to develop it to the point where it's a safe, confidential place where your teen or even yourself can send a text. We have our 24/7 hotline that we're very much thankful for. Anyone on here can call or send us a message and get in touch with one of our crisis counselors. And those crisis counselors are there for a couple of reasons. They're there if your teen or yourself have questions, you need resources, maybe you're in a tough situation and you don't know where to start. We've realized that throughout the pandemic, our numbers actually increased for this chat line, because talking on the phone is not always safe, right? In an abusive or unhealthy environment. And we also know that obviously, teens don't pick up the phone as much. And if your teen does talk on the phone, congratulations, that's very rare. But most of them text nowadays. So with that, I want to thank you all for your time. I'll go ahead and leave our contact information later, but just know that you're doing amazing, and I hope you all keep having conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you so much. Yes, as she said, you can just find us at laurashouse.org. And if you specifically want that team presentation, it says book a presentation. There's a pop-up right at the lower right-hand side. It's the easiest thing in the world. You just go and you can schedule a date and time that's convenient for you and what topic you want taught in your classroom or youth program. That goes for all adult presentations as well. I'm going to invite Amy and Clay to turn on their cameras. We do have some questions. Before we get into the questions about talking to your teens, the one thing that I heard that resonated with me a very long time ago, and that is that parents introduce their kids to danger to protect them from danger every single day. So when your toddler, is going around the house, you introduce them to the stove, saying, don't touch the stove, it can hurt you. Don't ever touch the stove. We walk them up to pools. Don't ever get close to the pool unless mommy or daddy or someone is here to help you. We walk them up to busy streets. Don't ever go near a busy street. We introduce them to danger to protect them. What we don't do is introduce them to the dangers that can happen online. And I think Clay nailed it. And those parents are very apprehensive because we don't want to give them ideas. We don't have to. The world is giving them ideas, and parents are the number one protectors. And so feel free to have those conversations with your kiddos and do it at a very age appropriate. If they're young and you're giving them a bath, only mommy and daddy can give you a bath. Of course, no one should ever take pictures as you're undressing, and that can be done in less than 5 seconds. And you just move on, but you're planting those seeds. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get to some of these questions. For those of you asking if there is a recording, there is. If you noticed, it actually announced about 15 minutes into Clay's presentation because I had hit record, at least I thought I did, and it didn't. And then I noticed during his presentation that that little beautiful red button wasn't on. So we will have the majority of this recorded for you. Okay, first question. And I'm going to address this to Clay, and I would love the other two to chime in. How do you talk with a teen when she's chatting with or doing something online when they become hostile when you ask and they tell you it is none of your business? So when a teen shuts you down, how do you continue that conversation?
Well, I tell parents, like, obviously, if you have a child who's maybe doesn't have a phone yet or just getting their phone and they're merging into social media, it's good to have them understand right away that there's a clear balance of power in your home. And that balance of power is 100% you, 0 your kid. So there may be no way to have that conversation with your child without them being unhappy about it. But at the end of the day, you are responsible for everything happening on that phone. That's your phone, not their phone. And you have your own you have your own responsibility for your child in terms of you want them to be well adjusted and be successful. And I know this is a difficult conversation for parents and kids, because the kid comes back with, well, why don't you trust me, or something like this. So what I recommend you do is stick to your guns, and you just kill them with kindness. I mean, you just say, look, I care about you so much. I love you so much that I want to know what's going on here. And it's not that I don't trust you, but I want to be able to help you and support you. And that's what you just keep saying. When my boys, wanted Snapchat and I said no to that, the bottom line was, if you want to play ball, I'm the only game in town. Like, you can have whatever you want when you move out and buy your own house. But until then, like, this is kind of what we're working with. So to some degree, you have to create the landscape that your kid understands that this is kind of how it's working. And then there's also the understanding that, yeah, sure, you could probably do that away from here. You could go to your friend's house and do those things. But there's going to be consequences. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it, or that it's okay for you. And so there's that understanding. And then lastly, parents, you need to thicken your skin a little bit, especially when you're engaging your child's digital world. And if let's say you're using something like Bark, and you're getting an alert on an email or a text, and you read it, and it's not something that, it's not about sex, drugs, violence. It's just maybe kids talking to each other when mom and dad aren't around. You're going to see things, you're going to hear things that aren't going to be like the best. But just remember, like when we were kids and our mom and dads weren't around, we said things that weren't the best. And so just kind of bifurcate the things that are kid nonsense, right? And then, or the things that we really need to engage in as a parent, and bifurcate those two. Otherwise, every hill is going to be a hill that you're going to die on, and it's going to be pretty rough. So we kind of need to understand that we have a place. Our boots need to be in our child's digital world, but also we need to understand, like, we just can't be like tromping around in there like haphazardly. We also kind of need to understand that we are part of this thing. There's kind of an ecosystem here that we need to respect, but at the same time, you may need to disappoint your kid and not say yes to Snapchat, for instance, or have this kind of rule in your home. And I want to just encourage parents that maybe the most important thing you can do for your kid is disappoint them now and again.
Yeah, that's excellent. I remember when my children first got on social media, and I was hyper protective, and they brought up the trust issue. And I told them, it's not that I don't trust you. You are swimming in a pool of sharks, and right now you're a guppy. And so it's my job as a parent to protect you, of which their response was, that was the dumbest example I've ever heard. So yeah, you have to have really thick skin when you deal with teenagers. But I still ring true. Okay, Amy, briefly, would you like to touch on this?
Yeah, sure. I was thinking that it's always ideal to discuss expectations from the outset. And if that hasn't happened, it's okay to kind of reel back a little bit and reapproach, like, hey, I'm realizing we didn't have a conversation about this, but let me make some things clear. There are also, as Clayton mentioned, a handful of different options too. When getting a new phone, I think there's different parental controls as far as if you want to add an app, you can add to, like, request it from the parent. The parent has to give consent or permission to download any apps. So that's another way to kind of safeguard that a little bit, kind of what's coming in. But yeah, I think discussing expectations from the outset is really just, here's what I expect. It isn't about trust. It's just, there are guidelines and every situation in our lives, basically. And here is a guideline, that it's my job to parent you. And this is one of those things that it needs to happen. Your business is my business right now. It just is, like Clayton said, it is. So I think that's always, kind of just laying out the expectations and allowing for that conversation to happen so that it's clear to teens, so they know what's expected of them.
That's awesome. And that expectations, like Clay invited you to a site, cybersafetycop.com, is that parental contract. And that's a beautiful tool to use to open up that conversation and to clearly outline those expectations. Julie, did you have anything to add?
Oh, I think y'all have amazing questions. I actually see them on the chat, so please go on for the next one.
I do want to add just one other thing too, is that whenever a parent leaves my presentation, they always say, man, I'm so glad there wasn't internet when I was a kid. So I just want to encourage parents to understand that your kid is you now, right? And what's different, when we were kids, we made bad choices, right, all the time, but it only existed in the memories of the people there, right? And now that, like I'm in the late 40s, early 50s thing, I'm starting to forget a lot of the things that we did back in the day. But your child doesn't get that grace. Your child gets one chance to make the right choice. As soon as you hit that send button, it's kind of bought and paid for. And being on the threat assessment team, I've investigated situations where kids did things that they thought were totally funny, right? That were clearly concerning and maybe look like a threat, that at age 16 changed their lives in a way that they could not comprehend. Our children just can't, because of the brain development, they're playing checkers, not chess. They're having a hard time thinking about the consequences, and looking at a screen, it feels very inconsequential. So that's why they need us to step in and provide that context, that support, because I don't think they can't just cognitively pull it off on their own. I mean, most can't. Some
Right.
can.
Great, thank you for adding that. Someone did ask, does Laura's House provide support groups or resources for parents? I'll address that. Yes, we do. We have many workshops that are offered every single month. They are free of charge. And we send out, I would recommend contacting me. I'll put my contact information, but we have a Healthy Family series that goes pretty deep into communication. And then we also have Unpacking family systems, how to handle difficult family members, as well, or difficult family relationships. That's a better way to put it. And then also how to help somebody that you suspect is in a harmful relationship. We're also going to offer holiday workshops on, now that we're going to get together with extended family members, that's not always fun. So how can we manage stress and so forth? So yes, but thank you for that question, because that gave me an idea for another workshop that we just focus on this. Okay, the next question is, and we're gonna have to be very brief here, but Amy, I'm gonna direct this to you. How do we discuss explicit content with a special needs child? A boy who other boys at school talk to him about videos on YouTube and have him search them up to find out what they are. So this boy has been targeted. What is your suggestion to the parent?
I think again, however you have found as the parent to communicate, since the information, he's been exposed to this information at this point. I think, there's many layers to this, right? There's many layers to this, but to just really, as much as possible, just be direct about it. I would say, give him the opportunity to ask questions, to understand, come from that place of, I want this to be a conversation. I want you to understand why this is not okay. It's such a cruel, it's a cruel world, but it's just really to just to really have a conversation about it and allow for those questions, no matter how difficult they might be. Again, from that developmental standpoint, answer them with in a way that he can understand. Maybe equate it with something that he has experienced in a different context, that there would be a deeper level of understanding. I hope that that's kind of making sense, and I hope that's helpful. But I honestly think, he's already been exposed. May as well just, kind of run with that and just address it head on. I would not avoid it. I would address it head on and just allow for that. I think it will just deepen also the bond and the connection with him, knowing that he can come to you when another life situation comes up that's uncertain, or not sure what this is about or what to make of this. You are the point of reference for your son, for your kids, and it's a good point of reference to come from. And it's better that they hear it from you rather than figure it out some other way.
Yeah, that was beautiful. So we're going to have to wrap it up here. I just kind of want to further reiterate is that we want to give power back to the parents. Start the conversation. As much as they're shunning you and you think that you are public enemy number one in their eyes, that is not really what's their internal dialogue. They need you. They love you, and they really lean on you to protect them from all of these ails. And Laura's house and the educators are there to further support in that endeavor. So please feel free to contact us for those presentations. Visit our event page if you actually want those public workshop offerings, because if you go to our calendar, it will have it. The November calendar will be up by Friday. We're a little late behind that. And December it'll be up first thing. So with that, I want to do a hat tip to Clay, a long lost friend that I am so glad we were able to reconnect. And Amy, thank you so much. It's wonderful to see you again. I have put both of their contact information in the chat box. And of course, Julia, thank you so much for beautifully presenting all of Laura's house programs and services, as well as what you are seeing in the classrooms and some of the trends. And thank you all for joining us this morning. We do hope you got something out of it. And I hope that you join us for future offerings. And with that, you all have a wonderful day. It's bye for now.